I've made you wait long enough to talk about Italy in Eurovision this year, so this is the week we're finally going to do it. Before we get there, though, we have Greece and Cyprus first. It's a very Mediterranean kind of feel today, and I'm glad to say that, like I say practically every single week at this point, we have a potential candidate to win the whole contest in here. Before we get to that, make sure you have liked and subscribed. Make sure that you followed me and my editor Jay on Twitter, and you can follow me on Instagram as well. You can also see videos a day early over on Patreon and support us in the process. Now let's see which Australians Cyprus have chosen this year to represent them in Eurovision. For the second time in a row, Cyprus cancelled their national final that they're allegedly meant to be holding, but at this point is clearly never going to happen, to instead internally select 17-year-old Cilia Kapsis with her song Liar. Take a look at yourself, 'cause that is what you need to do. Before we even talk about the song, the backstory here is absolutely wild, so we need to go through this first. Those of you who watched the 2023 Iceberg video may already know where I am going with this. Cast your minds back to 2023. The Greek internal selection, eventually won by Victor Vernikos with his song What They Say, was disputed by the artist that came second. That second place was Melissa Mantzoukis. Her legal team said that the result as presented in that selection was mathematically impossible, and therefore there had to have been foul play. Melissa sought a legal injunction to try and stop Victor from going to Eurovision, which was eventually unsuccessful. Following that drama, Melissa is on the canvas. She's down, she's out, she's alienated herself from the broadcaster and will probably never be considered for selection again. Just when she's at her lowest, what happens next? A 17-year-old Australian shows up, takes her song, and goes to Eurovision with it instead of her. Now, in all seriousness, I think what probably happened here is that the songwriter, Dimitris Kontopoulos, had a contract with Melissa which said, you don't get to release this song unless it is chosen for Eurovision. When it wasn't, Dimitris simply took the song and gave it to someone else who could fulfill their side of the bargain. Melissa's version of Cilia's song has been leaked, so we do know for a fact they were the same song. What I suspect happened here is Dimitris simply slid it back into the girl bop drawer, pulled it out the next year when Cilia came calling, and off she went. Dimitris actually has a very strong record in Eurovision, from Shady Lady in 2008 to Hold Me by Farid Mammadov to both of Sergei Lazarev's third placing efforts in 2016 and 2019. From all of this, we can say this was definitely a song he was holding back specifically for exposure at the contest. The song itself is a straight down the line pop banger, and it goes straight on to the Euroclub dance playlist, which is exactly what it was designed to do. It tells the story of being scorned by a lover who, as the title implies, has lied to Cilia. There are a few oddities about this, though, so I want to go through those quickly. Firstly, maybe I'm being overly harsh here, but whose idea was it to rhyme ooh la la with truth la la? Like, seriously, is that the best you can do? As if doing that once wasn't bad enough, they thought, oh, this is great, better do it again at the start of the second verse. And in general, the subject matter of this song just feels weird given that it's a 17-year-old singing it. It's not hugely surprising that, given essentially this has come in from Eurovision Walmart, been bought off the shelf as a finished package, that there's some dissonance between the song and the singer singing it. But it's kind of difficult to believe that a 17-year-old has this kind of love drama. This is a problem you're always going to have when buying in a complete package like this. It's never going to feel genuine and sincere. It's never going to feel truly like the singer is connected to the song. In addition to that, Cyprus clearly blew the entire budget on buying the song from Dimitris Kontopoulos, because the music video clearly had a budget of about £10. It essentially consists of Cilia dramatically dancing through some hotel corridors with a pair of hotel porters, and intersperses that with some snaps from her holidays. At least that's what it feels like. The flip side of this is that it does show that Cilia can dance. Obviously, that still begs the question about whether she can dance and sing at the same time. Overall, the production is solid, the song is actually pretty good, and Cilia does her job, at least in the studio version. Whether that will translate to the live remains to be seen, and I think a lot of that is going to depend on what they're doing with Cilia right now to prepare her. She's young, she has extremely limited performing experience, and that means it's quite difficult to predict where this is going to end up at Eurovision. We'll get onto that in a minute. The most important thing is that they protect her through this experience, because mentally at such a young age, this is a lot to be going through. With all the uncertainties about her experience in mind, I'm going to paint out two scenarios for how this could go at Eurovision. I'm going to firstly give the most pessimistic possible scenario, and then the most optimistic scenario. What I'm saying is, imagine a Cypriot entry at Eurovision where everything that could go wrong goes wrong. Let's say it turns out that Cilia can't dance and sing at the same time. Either, option one, she stays still or mostly still during her performance, making it static and less dynamic than it otherwise would be, or the delegation don't realize in time, they have a full dance routine planned out, and as a result, Cilia's vocals are breathy, they're off-key, and the whole thing falls flat. Secondly, on the vocals themselves, it's perfectly plausible at her age, with, relatively speaking, limited training, that her vocals could become strained, that she could struggle with the demands of the constant rehearsals, the constant performing. If that's the case, by the time we get to the semi-finals, or the final in the best case scenario, we may start to see problems. She may struggle to deliver her best performance. Finally, and probably most importantly, there is the point about experience. Eurovision is scary. Even for experienced artists, it's perfectly plausible that Cilia gets to Eurovision, does not deliver her best purely because of nerves. And to be clear, there is nothing to be ashamed of, even as an experienced performer, to be in that position, especially for her at such a young age. Even getting up on that stage is a really brave thing to do. If any one of these things happen, I don't think Cyprus is qualifying. It'll be down, out, and not close either, because there are simply too many other songs, both in the whole competition and in this semi-final, which are competing for the same voters. But that is not the scenario I hope for, and it's not the only one. Far from it. So let's talk about the optimistic scenario, the best case. We should remember that Cilia is in the position she is in for a reason. She's been winning scholarships and competitions her entire life. If it turns out that yes, she can sing and dance, she has a great choreo, and the performance all comes together, the equation for this song totally changes. What I'm trying to say is that with this kind of song, the outcome very largely depends on the delivery. The ultimate example of this is Fuego by Eleni Ferrero, which nobody considered before Eurovision 2018, and then suddenly it rocketed to the #1 favorite to win the contest when people saw the rehearsals. To be clear, this is definitely not going to finish second like Eleni did, but if it all comes together, I could see 11th to 15th place in the final being a realistic possibility. If we end up somewhere in the middle between the dream and nightmare scenarios that I've illustrated, you're looking at somewhere down near the bottom of the leaderboard, but nevertheless in the final, which I think Cyprus would regard as a success. That means, of course, it would be borderline qualifying or not, but ultimately it's in Cilia's hands, it's in the delegation's hands. They're the ones with the power to influence this. Because of that, I'm choosing to remain optimistic about this entry for now. Next up, we're talking about Greece, and I just want to say before I start that Greek food is elite. It's possibly my favorite cuisine of any country in the world. The only ones that get close to it for me are Georgian or Italian, coincidentally. So well done, Greece. I love your food. If you're ever in central London, by the way, Souvlaki Soho, absolutely amazing. I recommend you go. Anyway, this year, having made the mistake last year of sending an unproven 16-year-old and then completely butchering the staging, Greece have gone for the complete opposite by choosing someone who is about as musically qualified as you're ever going to find. It's Marina Satti with her song Zari. Firstly, just a word or two on how unhinged the music video for this song is. Marina meets a tourist at the airport, runs a tour with one of those neat little flags that tour guides always have, visits a series of Athens' best sights, has a little dance through the streets, terrifies the aforementioned tourist by sticking him in the back of a speeding taxi and pulling a peace sign while it does drifts, before closing things off with another dance, some on-screen graphics, oh look, more cats, and then a postcard at the Parthenon. The whole thing is totally insane and I love it. I want to look into the mind of this woman when she was playing this video, because on paper it must have been absolutely batshit insane. This would have made absolutely no sense. So it makes it even more incredible that, to be honest, as a video, it kind of works. I really enjoyed it. As for Marina herself, her life and her musical experiences are about as varied as the song is. She had classical vocal training as a child. She went to study architecture, but never finished her degree, and instead went on to earn 2 separate degrees in music. Firstly, in lyrical monody, which is a form of classical Greek singing, and secondly in advanced classical studies from the Nakas Conservatory, which is one of the top musical institutions in Greece. After that, just like Theodora, she studied at the Berklee College of Music in the US. The point of all of this is to say, Marina Satti is really, really, really good. And also, in addition to that, she is totally immersed in Greek musical tradition. With all of that, the challenge is, how do you take all of these different influences, all of these different sources, compress them down into 3 minutes for Eurovision as a pop song, and Marina describes her music herself as pop, and then make it a big success? Well, the answer is do something like this, because in my opinion, this song is absolute gold dust. And as Marina says in the lyrics, she does it her way. This song is marketable and it's accessible, but most importantly, it is extremely Marina. People who were fans of her music before will have gotten exactly what they were expecting from her. And to be clear, that's a really good thing. This song is a masterclass on how to show your musical background in a way that makes sense and is accessible to people who don't speak your language or who haven't listened to your music before, while also staying true to those roots, to the inspirations that you have. Greeks seem to agree with me on this one because this song went straight to #1 in Greece, and at the time of recording, that is where it remains. Personally, when it came to Marina, I was going in totally blind. I wasn't familiar with her music before she entered Eurovision. Luckily, everything I found made me pretty happy. I went back, I listened to a bunch of her old songs, I listened to a live performance she did for KEXP in 2020, and I'd really recommend that you do too. One thing that was interesting was that in the opening song of that set, she uses the exact same musical device as she uses in the intro to Zari. Let's check that out quickly. Central to all of this is the fusion of modern pop and hip-hop elements with classical Greek music and musical traditions. Secondly, that KEXP set made very clear what I was kind of already assuming by this point. This girl is talented. As soon as I heard this song and Cyprus's song, I knew I had to put them side by side, and the reason is you can compare them and really see such a massive difference. They are two songs at about 100 beats per minute. They both have female leads. They both have the same drum beat underneath it. Listen, you'll hear it's there. Instrumentally, obviously, they're completely different, but it's important we make this comparison because it's going to help me explain why I think this is so much better than Cyprus's song. While Cyprus has a beat that could come from any country that we've heard a million times before instrumentally, that has nothing recognizably Cypriot about it, Greece has brought something new and unique that utilizes elements that are familiar to us, but simultaneously presents us something that you can listen to for 5 seconds and go, yes, that is Greece. While Cyprus is rhyming ooh la la with true la la, Greece has a song that is sung in Greek, which is actually written by the artist who is performing it. While Cyprus has essentially built an IKEA flat pack Eurovision entry, Greece has brought in an incredible artist, given them the space to work and the space to express themselves, and as a result, they've produced something really incredible. This year, when it comes to Eurovision, Cyprus is a off-the-shelf microwave meal. Greece is a full buffet with the nicest tzatziki you have ever tasted. The question then is, how much potential does this have? And I am pretty optimistic. Think about those questions I asked of Cyprus. Think about what I said about the experience of the performer, the strength of the song. Think about what I said about staging. I am more optimistic on every single one of these fronts when it comes to Greece. Vocally, firstly, there's not a single thing to worry about. I think we all know that Marina is going to smash this out of the park, so much so that I think it barely even merits discussion. That leaves the question of the staging, and there is something exciting here, which is that Marina has said the staging will be all one camera shot. This can go wrong in Eurovision, as we saw with Trincha Osterhuis in 2015. Butchered the pronunciation once again. But to be honest, that was rubbish. It was really rubbish. We just kind of got these weird mid-range shots that didn't really work. We spent a lot of time looking at the back of her head. It was terrible. I don't think that's what's going to happen now. Luckily, I think the Swedish production this year is going to allow for something much better than this. The big challenge when it comes to a single camera shot performance is producing something that stays engaging for the whole 3 minutes. We need plenty of eye contact with the camera from the artist. We need a choreo and we need props that add to the performance but do not distract from Marina too much. Luckily, I do think we are going to avoid this problem because Fokas Evangelinos is the staging director behind the scenes here. He's produced some of the best prop-based stagings in recent Eurovision history. Just a few of those include Sakis Rouvas's Coffee Table from 2009, Sergei Lazarev in 2016, and Dorados from Moldova in 2018. Looking at his track record, there are definitely more hits than misses for me, so I'm pretty confident on this front as well. All of this means that qualification, I think, is pretty certain for Greece this year, and in addition, that means that we will see Greece sending a song in Greek in the final for the first time in more than a decade. As for the result, this package all coming together could lead to a top 10 finish, and it would be richly deserved. So, I have high hopes for Greece, but I have even higher hopes for the final country we're going to discuss in this video. Strap yourselves in, because this section is going to be a long one. It's time to talk about Italy. Firstly, I want to clear some beef with the Italians. Yes, in my first video on this channel, I said Sanremo went on too long, and then I basically made an entire video purely for the purpose of trashing on Turin's hosting in 2022. But please, hear me out here. I have to give credit where credit is due, because Sanremo this year produced some absolute bangers. There is no getting around that. In addition to that, there was so much drama, some of which we can laugh about, some of which we really can't. We will cover all of it over the next however many minutes it'll take me to get through this. For those of you who don't know, Festival de Sanremo has existed longer than the Eurovision Song Contest and was the competition that inspired the format of Eurovision when it was created. This thing is way bigger in Italy than Eurovision is, and over 14 million people tuned in to watch on the final night. When the 30 competing songs were released, they occupied every single place in the top 30 on Spotify in Italy. No other country can even get close to that. Italians do get a little bit touchy when you refer to this as a national final, so I'm going to try and find a compromise position here. Sanremo is Italy's national music competition that also functions as a mechanism to select its song for Eurovision. The winner gets first refusal on whether they would like to participate or not. Last time the winner refused to go to Eurovision was in 2016, and in their place, the song that finished second went instead. That meant we got Francesca Michelin with her adorable plant. Anyway, we have so much to get through here. We're going to talk about 6 of the 30 songs during this show, and we're going to talk about a fair amount of drama along the way. Firstly, rather fittingly given the result in 2023, we're going to talk about a band that lost out to a Swedish jury favourite despite being the overwhelming favourite of the public. It's Il Volo with their song Capolavoro. The song's title translates to masterpiece. It is not, but it is quite nice. I know that's condemnation by faint praise, but it was always going to be impossible to reach the heights that Grand Amore did. Il Volo aren't really breaking any new ground with this song. It's a power ballad. It relies heavily on their impressive vocals, and it has that same bombastic drum beat in the background that we'll be familiar with from their previous efforts. They certainly deliver on what they're trying to do, and it goes without saying that their voices have matured massively since 2015 when they were barely in their 20s. But there was never any chance of this getting high up the scoreboard, and their 8th place finish was about the best they could have expected. There was a nice execution here, but sadly, the underlying song just wasn't good enough to push them into the upper realm of the scoreboard. Luckily, we did have one Eurovision alumni who delivered in a big way. It was Mahmoud with his song Tutor Gold. 5 cellulari nella tuta gold, baby, non richiamerò. Ballavamo nella zona nord quando mi chiamavi fra. I was actually worried at first when Mahmoud was reported to be returning to Sanremo, because if there is anyone who has unmeetable expectations when it comes to Eurovision, it is Mahmoud. Even though he's left the stabby twink on the sidelines this time, there is still such a high bar to clear, and it's amazing that somehow Mahmoud still managed to do it. This one came with some genius marketing in the form of a TikTok dance, which did exactly what it was meant to do, sent the streaming numbers through the roof, and sent the song straight to #1 in Italy. With that in mind, and given Mahmoud's pedigree in this competition, I honestly expected this to, if not win, come very high up. So I was surprised to see it just miss out on the top 5 and finish in 6th place overall. How you get to the top 5 overall in Sanremo is a bit confusing, so I'm going to take this opportunity to go through how the voting system works. You may need a notebook for this one. Sanremo lasts for 5 nights, and there is voting on every single night. It goes as follows. On night 1, all 30 entrants are voted on by the jury made up of members of the press. On night 2 and 3, half of the songs performed per her night, and the public and a second jury made up of radio people, a second jury made up of radio professionals vote on those performances. On night 4, all of the artists perform covers, and all three, the press, the radio jury, and the public, all vote in the split 33, 33, 34. So the public are very, very marginally more powerful than the others. Still with me? Good, because after those 4 nights, that's all converted into an overall provisional ranking. Additionally, at the end of each night, the public is shown the top 5 overall at that point. On night 5, the public vote again on all 30 songs to determine the top 5, where at the end of it all, there is a final 33, 33, 34 split, just like before, to determine the winner. Don't spend too much time trying to understand this. Your head will just start to hurt. After the first 4 nights, Mahmoud was in 6th place. Only the top 5 artists go through to the final round. Mahmoud did finish 5th in the public vote on night 5, but unfortunately for him, the song that was in 5th place overall before that night finished 6th in the public vote. The overall swing towards Mahmoud was not enough to push him through into that final round. Hopefully this makes sense. I'm not sure I fully understand it, and I'm the one trying to explain it, so if you don't feel bad. Nobody gets this. What all of this meant ultimately was Mahmoud's journey in Sanremo was over. So let's move on and talk about the next song. It's going to be Gali with his effort this year, Casa Mia. This song sits pretty neatly on the line between pop and hip hop, and unsurprisingly, given its name, it's about the idea that nothing really hits quite like home does. While Eurovision isn't any Sanremo artist's top priority, this was the kind of song that, while I really liked it, I couldn't really see it at the contest because I felt it lacked the big wow moment you need to really see yourself shooting up the leaderboard. With that said, that didn't stop Gali from becoming one of the biggest stories at Sanremo this year for other reasons. After one of his performances, he said this.
Stop al genocidio.
Before I talk about this, I just want to address something that I've seen a lot in the last couple of months. There's been a lot of people saying that I should not talk about politics and that I should stick to music or similar. The simple fact of the matter is, all of this is part of the Eurovision story this year, and what I want to do is tell people the full story. I'm not going to leave things out because they're uncomfortable to talk about or because some people would rather ignore them. With that in mind, let's talk about the reaction to what Gali said. He was not the only artist that week to express solidarity with Palestinians. Dargan D'Amico and Eros Ramazzotti both did the same. The thing that made Gali the center of this was the use of the word genocide. It attracted a condemnation from the Israeli ambassador, a statement from the chief executive of Italy's national broadcaster, and ultimately it caught the attention of the Prime Minister of Italy herself. She said that the festival was not the right place to talk about international crises, particularly if it is done in one direction. There's a lot to unpack here, so I'm going to try and keep my comments focused around Gali and his freedom of expression as an artist. Ultimately, with shows like this, you're giving these artists a platform, and it's up to those artists on how they choose to use it. By speaking as he did, Gali sparked a conversation both in Italy and abroad, and this received coverage all across Europe. His right to do that should be defended, and I think it's a good thing that music is powerful and that artists are able to use the power to advocate for the things they care about. More generally, I want to do the same thing that I've done every time these issues have come up during Eurovision season this year, and that is to advocate for you to donate to medical aid for Palestinians. There's a link in the description if you're able to do so. One last thing before we move on. I do find it quite striking that a lot of the criticism of Gali came in from the same kinds of people who love to talk about how their free speech is being restricted by the woke mafia or whatever else. Quite frankly, for a lot of these people, Gali could have said what he said in any context, anywhere, and they still would have had a problem with it. I'm just saying maybe some self-reflection would be helpful for some of his critics. We still have 3 songs to talk about, so we're going to press on, and next up is 6-time Sanremo participant Annalisa coming back once again with her song Sinceramente. every single artist should sign up to the Annalisa School of Bridge Writing because the bridge in this song is possibly my favorite of any song in any national final this year. It is absolutely stunning. It's high drama and it has the vocal to match. It's been all over my Twitter timeline since the moment she performed this on night one, and rightly so. Seriously, you should go and listen to the full song after this. You really won't regret it. On release, this song rocketed Annalisa to #1 in the odds to win the show, and to be honest, I'm really not surprised. At the time of release, it was one of the 10 biggest streaming debuts by any song by a female artist this year. It went double platinum in Italy and was only kept off #1 in the charts by Tuta Gold by Mahmood. With that in mind, it was a little disappointing to see the televote result on night 5 not quite match what I was hoping for. The song itself, aside from the otherworldly bridge, is a danceable pop song, fairly straight down the line, which centers around the idea of having the freedom to be who you are. According to Annalisa, she came up with the idea for this song one night when she was struggling to sleep, which makes me feel bad because when I'm struggling to sleep, I think of silly gags for YouTube videos. This is one of 3 songs alongside Mahmood and another one that I will not yet say that I feel would have been amazing at Eurovision and is an absolute banger. It has all the ingredients for me. It's catchy, and I really think that finale could have been such a moment on the Eurovision stage in Malmö, and I'm sad that we're not going to see it. It wasn't to be, but Annalisa did take her 3rd place finish very gratefully. Sadly, the same cannot be said for the next act we're going to talk about. Giulia was that man with his song pt7. The song itself is a fairly straight down the line hip hop song, but the story around it at this point has grown far larger than the act itself. Some context for this. So Giulia is from Campania, which is in southern Italy. It's most well known for the city of Naples, and it's also one of the poorest regions in the whole country. As a consequence, when Giulia started winning the televote each night, the classism started coming in thick and fast. This came to a head on 2 separate occasions. Firstly, on night 4, which remember is covers night, Giulia performed alongside Gue, Luce and Gigi D'Alessio, which in itself was kind of a big moment for Italian rap because Sanremo has not always been the most friendly platform for Italian rap. Now, clearly this year that has remained mostly the same. The performance was ranked 26th with the radio jury, 28th with the press jury, but it won the televote by a mile. It was a landslide winner. It took home 43% of the vote, and it meant that at the end of night 4, Giulia was #1 overall in the whole festival. The press jury responded to this by booing as the result was announced, and one member of the press was even heard saying, "This is why we shouldn't let Campania vote." On the final night in the 5-song super final, the press and radio juries placed Giulia 4th and 5th respectively, ensuring that despite another landslide win in the televote, it was impossible for him to win the festival overall. I would have more sympathy for Giulia, who objectively was treated very badly, if not for the fact he went back to Naples and responded by yelling at a crowd out of a window. What he was saying was that in the end, he had won in spirit because he had the people on his side. And I do have a lot of sympathy for him in this respect. He clearly had a reason to be angry, and he was probably deliberately blocked from winning the show. But the thing is that this is a really great way to ensure you never get invited back. It means that you're not going to have that same platform again. I think it would have been more advisable for Giulia to try and keep his emotions controlled in the hope that he can change that platform to be more friendly to artists like him in the future. Before I cover the final song, a couple of dishonorable mentions when it comes to drama. Firstly, John Travolta's shoes. No, I will not be elaborating. And secondly, the 2 bomb threats that were called in against the show during the week. You're just going to have to wait until the iceberg for those because there is not time to cover them here. The winner of Sanremo and Italy's entry into Eurovision 2024 is Angelina Mango with her song La Noia. This is an absolute banger. I know I've said that so much in this video, but we have just eaten so well today. And this one is possibly my favorite of the lot. It's super, super catchy. I listened to it a bunch of times while I was writing the script for this video, and it's been stuck in my head ever since. And you know what? I'm not really mad about it. Incidentally, Angelina is actually also from southern Italy, but she moved to Milan when she was 15. She's only 22, so she doesn't have a massive back catalogue, but we do have a EP which charted inside the top 3 in Italy and 3 top 10 singles, of which La Noia is the latest. When it comes to Eurovision, I think the potential for this is sky high. Pop songs are a really common occurrence at Eurovision, so like with Greece and Cyprus, we are looking for songs that find a way to elevate themselves above the others. This one certainly does, and I want to highlight a couple of ways in which I feel it personally hits all the right buttons for me. Firstly, I really like that this song has 2 separate types of chorus. It sort of has a more restrained chorus where the brass is slightly dampened, slightly lower down in the mix, and then it has a second, all guns blazing, punch you in the face chorus where the brass is much more prominent. The effect that this has is that the first chorus leaves you wanting more, but that becomes a good thing because you then get that release, you get that fulfillment from the full chorus that comes later. Secondly, when we think about songs that win Eurovision, we look for a moment, for something incredible that makes this song stand out amongst others, and I think we potentially could have that in the form of Angelina's a cappella bridge, which doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel shoehorned in, it simply feels like a natural moment where she's able to showcase her vocals. And we should say, by the way, this song is super word dense, and the kind of breath control you need to be able to sing this song is absolutely exceptional. The fact that Angelina can do this at 22 is ridiculous. She's note perfect, and not once does she even seem to be on unsteady ground. Some singers really do distinguish themselves above all others, and I really feel that this year in Eurovision, Angelina is going to be one of those. Overall, how's it going to do? And you can probably see where I'm going with this one. Angelina Mango could absolutely win Eurovision and take us back to Italy for the second time in under 5 years. All season long, I have been talking about this really even field, and I completely stand by all of those comments. What that means is, if you get a song that could get 230 from the juries, 230 from the televote, you could end up with enough for a winner. Italy, I think, could be that song. It has that broad appeal because it has the vocal ability, it has the catchiness, it has the crowd-pleasing nature, it has enough about it to tick all the boxes. Sometimes having a broad appeal can be a curse because it suggests that a song isn't unique enough. Sometimes it can be the opposite, where something has a broad appeal because it is unique and it is special. It's just an exceptional example of this kind of music. That is absolutely true for La Noia, and I am so excited to see how far up the scoreboard Italy can go with it in May. One request though, Italy. If you do win again, please, for the love of God, learn the lessons from 2022. No more kinetic suns. With that, we have reached the end of this marathon video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, because we will be back in 7 days with more, and every week between now and the contest in May. Thank you as always for your amazing support. It has blown me away the last few months, and I can't wait to do it all again next week. For now, see you around and take care.